In our history books, such as Robin Hood and King Arthur, Blackadder is a mythical figure, and none the worse for that. Although I believe responsible parents should tell their children when they reach the age of 21 that Blackadder is not real. But some of the other characters in the series were real famous people. It was a kind of period docu-soap.
Splice me 10 miles of water. It's Bucko to see you. Oh, matey!
I'm sorry?
Yes.
And made cherubim and seraphim.
Hey! Yuck! Gosh.
Elizabeth was actually quite moderate in terms of how many people she killed.
Sometimes I think about having you executed just to see the expression on your face.
And the idea of the Tudors sort of saying off with her head is a common one. It's very 1066 and all that. It wasn't really very realistic.
How's that?
Mercy, who's queen?
Whoops, butterfingers.
It was very, very frightening what Miranda did with Queen Elizabeth.
Yes, well done, Your Majesty.
Turn her into this kind of psychotic.
You know I'm really very keen on you indeed, don't you?
Oh, yes, ma'am, as you were keen on Essex.
Exactly.
Right up to the point at which you had his head cut off.
He didn't mind that. He knew it was only little me.
She's quite prone to sending people off to be trimmed, a small nip and tuck involving their head usually. She's quite flirtatious. Someone caught on the cusp of girl and woman. That struggle going on within.
I was tucked into bed having this absolutely scrummy dream about ponies when I was wakened by a terrific bagging from Lord Melchett.
Well, I never knew he had it in him.
I don't think Elizabeth I was as silly as Miranda Richardson's Queenie is, but I suspect she was just as, keen on handsome men.
And my bedroom's just upstairs, you know.
Throughout history, the Blackadders were always at the centre of the action, duelling with Wellington.
So you recognize us at last.
Yes, unless I'm very much mistaken, you're the winner of the Round Britain shortest, fattest, dumpiest woman competition.
Insulting royalty.
Oi, that's my horse.
Killing royalty.
Mr. Leonardo Metropolis.
Meeting great artists and writers.
I love you, Dr. Johnson, and I want to have your baby.
And serving a mad prince.
The public love me. Only the other day I was out in the street and they sang, "We hail Prince George! We hail Prince George!"
We hate Prince George. We hate Prince George.
The Prince Regent was this fat oaf of a man who loved spending money on uniforms even though he'd never fought in a battle. Hugh Laurie plays him in that silliness very, very well.
Prince George, who is described in his party news sheet as a great moral and spiritual leader of the nation, but is described by almost everyone else as a fat, flatulent git.
The main difference, which actually is quite funny, is the fact that Hugh Laurie is thin and the Prince Regent was really fat, and yet they always refer to him being really fat in the series. It's hysterical.
The Walrus Awakes.
Ben and Richard had written fantastic jokes and some great opportunities to shout. Pull faces, which is sort of what I do, or what I did at the time. I've moved on since then. Oh, yes. I've grown, matured.
It's a sad fact that for many years the art of the sitcom wasn't fully appreciated. And even when it was the writers and the stars who got the plaudits. With Blackadder, everyone should get an award. Especially the man behind the music.
Blackadder, Blackadder, Blackadder. The sound of hoofbeats cross the glade. Good folk, lock up your son and daughter.
With a producer like John Lloyd, his instant reaction is to say, give it a try. How bad can it be?
Blackadder, Blackadder, he rides a pitch black steed.
Once we had a tune that everybody liked, it was a question of rearranging and finding other ways to do it.
For every series, Howard created a distinctive arrangement of the Blackadder theme, always reflecting the era, but just like the writers, not afraid to take a few liberties as well. An Elizabethan one. A Georgian one. And finally, a World War I one. The one that everyone remembers, though, is the closing music for Blackadder 2.
In the second series, the music was suggesting Tudor period and all that. And then we put on this countertenor, that's a male falsetto voice.
To fall in love with boys is weird.
And the idea was, instead of just doing one final tune with a lyric, which we'd done in the first series, to do a different one for each episode.
Was mime it with this lute and generally make a nuisance of myself being a pesky person around Rowan. I'd leap out of a hedge or run up behind him or something. It seemed very funny at the time.
For all its enjoyment of elaborate language, there were times when Blackadder could be very simple. There was an inspired moment during rehearsals for the fourth series when a new character's name was changed. Never in the history of British sitcom has one word got so many laughs.
What do you want, darling?
Captain Darling is, I think, one of the great comic creations, and it came from an actor's determination to carve himself a place here.
The character that was written was a bit vague.
Hello? Hello, Captain Blackadder, hello?
Tim said, I've been dragged in here for this teeny-weeny part, and I'm, you know, where's my laughs?
At ease, everybody, now where's my map?
And then Stephen chimes in, he says, yeah, and Cartwright's a really boring name, isn't it?
God, it's a barren, featureless desert out there, isn't it?
The other side, sir.
For some reason, I had this thought that he should have a name that was a constant embarrassment to him.
Captain Darling? Funny name for a guy, isn't it?
And Richard says, yeah, okay, all right, very funny joke, but it's funny once. It won't be funny the second time.
Cup of coffee, darling?
We had absolutely no idea that these would become huge laughs whenever he just called my name.
What is the matter with you today, darling?
That was a complete shock when we did it the first time in front of an audience.
Come on, darling, we're leaving.
It didn't really matter what he said.
Don't be ridiculous, darling.
Someone just had to reply, yes, darling, or of course, darling.
Well, we have to have some secrets, don't we, darling?
It became like a few lines out of a Noel Coward play.
It was fraught with potential for confusion.
That particular episode where Melcher's getting dressed for dinner, Darling being worried about being spoken to in a loving kind of way.
I want to make you happy, darling. I want to build a nest for your 10 tiny toes. I want to cover every inch of your gorgeous body in pepper and then sneeze all over you.
Really, sir? I must protest.
You're not quite sure how to react, as I think you wouldn't be quite sure how to react in real life.
How dare you tell me how I may or may not treat my beloved Georgina?
Georgina?
Frightening.
Yes, I'm working out what I want to say to her this evening.
Oh, yes, of course. Thank God.
All right?
Yes, sir, listening, sir.
Honestly, darling, you really are the most graceless, dim-witted bumpkin I ever met.
I don't think you should say that to us.